let's talk about Young Storytellers. Tell me exactly what Young Storytellers is, what you all do. Share a little bit about your mission and impact.
So at Young Storytellers, we center young people to be the driving force of their own narratives by mentoring them to write their own original stories and then see them brought to life in their communities. And through that experience, they learn that their voice matters.
Hello, and welcome to the Leadership Reality Podcast with your girl, Tige Charity. This podcast is for C-suite leaders to discuss their experiences and provide insight, encouragement, and inspiration for seasoned and inspiring leaders, offering valuable solutions to today's challenges that will inspire, ignite, and invigorate new and seasoned leaders to walk in their God-given authority with compassion, kindness, and empathy. So sit back, relax, and be prepared to be inspired with today's episode of Leadership Reality. Thank you.
Y'all, today I'm super excited because our guest is my buddy, my friend, one of the most forward-thinking and coolest leaders that I know, Bill Thompson. He is the president and CEO of Young Storytellers. Welcome to Leadership Realities, Bill.
Thank you for having me. I'm very humbled to be here.
Well, I'm super excited. I'm trying to contain myself, okay? So listen, tell me a little bit first. Let's talk about Young Storytellers.
Sure.
Tell me exactly what Young Storytellers is, what you all do. Share a little bit about your mission and impact.
So at Young Storytellers, we center young people to be the driving force of their own narratives by mentoring them to write their own original stories and then see them brought to life in their communities. And through that experience, they learn that their voice matters.
Yes, I love that. It's so funny because Bill and I programs mirror similarly. Bill and I met in a leadership program called City Scholars, and Bill's program was called Script to Stage.
That's right.
And I was like, wait a minute, but we script to screen. I called Bill up. I was like, yo, Bill, I think we're going to rename our program Script to Screen. He's like, go for it. Coolest CEO I know. Well, again, I am so excited. How long has Young Storytellers been fulfilling the mission of giving young people agency and voice over their stories?
It started as a program in 1997 in one public school. It incorporated as a 501c3 in 2003, and we're still here today. So we've been a nonprofit for 21 years, and now I'm going to have to do the math. I think it's been 27 years that we've been providing programs.
Wow. And you've been leading the organization for how many years?
15. This might be my 16th year.
Wow.
I started as a volunteer initially, and then I came to work at Young Storytellers in 2006 and became executive director at the end of 2008.
And I know that the organization has grown expeditiously under your leadership. You guys are in how many schools now?
Well, here in Los Angeles, we're in, with our Story Lab program, close to 70 schools.
70, 70.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you said that's just here in LA.
That's here in
Let's
LA.
talk about across the country.
Well, then we also have programs in New York City, Little Rock, Arkansas, Denver, Colorado, Austin, Texas, and then we're launching programs next year in Atlanta and Miami.
I love it. You know I'm trying to be like you when I grow up, right?
Oh, please. You've done it. Look at where we are. I mean...
But that is absolutely amazing. And you have a team of how many?
We have a team of 15 full-time and 3 part-time.
3 part-time.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. So when did you first sort of tap into your leadership role? When did you first realize that, you know, I have some pretty good leadership skills?
I think, so, you know, I sort of found myself in the theater. I mean, that was the place where, I don't know, I sort of discovered who I am and what my voice is, and I had leadership opportunities in the theater. So when I was in college, I had the opportunity to stage manage a play. And then I ended up, after grad school, I produced a play. It was actually a play that I had produced in grad school that then we took to the Fringe Festival in New York. And those were really the opportunities that I had to take on a leadership role, and where I realized for myself, like, oh, I have a set of skills outside of being an actor, which is what I was originally. So I think that was it. But even if I go back to high school, I mean, I was editor of my school paper, so I did journalism, and I was editor of the school paper. So I had done some leadership things, but only in areas where I was like really interested. I wasn't like president of student council or something.
Not that you couldn't be though.
No.
But he's like, no. But in that capacity of, at least in Young Storytellers, what do you find are some of the highs and lows of leaderships? What's the challenges that you face, and how do you navigate those?
I mean, I think, one of the challenges is that the world is just changing so quickly.
Yes, it is. It really is.
So I think it often feels like whack-a-mole, right? Like you put all of your energy into this area of need and you got it figured out, and then you're like, oh, we sprung a leak over here. And it's like, all right, so now I got to go over here and figure out, diagnose this problem, figure out what we need, get people to come in and help. All right, we got it set. Oh, now we got to go over here. So I think that is a challenge, but that's also in some ways what keeps it dynamic.
Yeah. Keep you on your toes.
That's right. I mean, every day is different.
Yes, it is.
Which I'm grateful for. Like, I don't think that if I were like an automaton, like sitting at a job doing the same thing 8 to 10 hours a day, week in and week out, year in and year out, that I'd be fulfilled in any way. So I think it's like most things, it's like it could be a blessing and a curse.
Right. Absolutely.
But I think that's something that I definitely have found to be a challenge, especially in the last 5 years between COVID, AI.
Right.
I mean, it's like the hits just keep on coming. These are big tectonic shifts that are happening in the world that are impacting the young people that we work with and are really impacting what their future looks like. And
Absolutely.
I think, trying to stay ahead of that the best that we can is what I try to spend time doing.
Absolutely. How do you keep your team inspired and encouraged as we navigate this?
The answer to that is always they just work with the young people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's true. Like the team, so many of our team started as volunteers, like working in programs. And then when you move to the office, you're coordinating everything that allows the programs to happen. But we think it's really important for our team to still be participating in programs.
Absolutely.
Because I think it just keeps you keyed into the mission
and grounded
and gets you understanding and reminds you of like what you're doing and why you're doing it. And when things are tough, it's not as tough as it is for the young people that you're working for. So I really think that's the
key.
The strategy for us, yeah.
So all of your employees were volunteers first?
No, not all of them, but many of them. A lot of them came through. I mean, that's how they were introduced to it. I'm sure this has happened for you too. Like as you professionalize as an organization, it becomes less about the people that were there in the beginning and more about people that have been other places that are bringing in skills and experiences that are going to help move the organization forward. So now in our hiring process, I mean, we're identifying, very skilled people that have been doing it in other places and bringing them in and saying like, share some of that secret sauce with us so that we can grow as an organization. Yeah.
That's very important. And I know for us really trying to find the right people to put in, certain positions, but really making sure that people understand the why behind what we do and they're able to connect with the young people. But we
that's
brought
first.
in first and foremost.
And that's right. There has to be values alignment, and that's exactly. I mean, because otherwise it doesn't matter what skills or expertise or how smart they are.
If you
how
don't
hard
fit
they're
into the
work,
culture.
if they don't fit into the culture, if they don't get why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
100%.
So what is the culture like at Young Storytellers? Because I view you as like the coolest guy ever. I get to sit with you in leadership class and just hear some of the profound stuff that you share. And I'm like, wait a minute, why wasn't I writing that down? If I could have my phone out during class, I would record a lot of the stuff I hear you say. But,
I mean, I think I would describe our culture as it's just people-centric. Right? I think we care about people. We're in the business of people. We attract people who care about people.
Yes.
I think it's a culture of like decency and
Yeah,
integrity and
the common things that we should all possess,
I think we
right?
should all have.
Exactly.
And honestly, like I feel so responsible for the culture because I've been able to create the culture. So
Yeah.
really, it's also a culture that I think puts people first, allows them to show up as their full selves. Family is super important in our culture. So I think that those are the things. I don't know. It's the golden rule,
Yeah.
right?
Treat
Of
people
like,
the way you want to be treated.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think there's no reason. I mean, our mantra is always, if it's good enough for the kids, it's good enough for us.
Wow.
So if we're doing it in the classroom, we should be doing it as a staff team. We should be doing it as a board. Like,
Yes.
there's no differentiation. This is the way that these are the spaces we believe should be created for people.
Yes.
And we should benefit from them as much as
Absolutely.
our young people do.
Absolutely. Have you had some of your staff members, your management staff people, your program staff people that didn't fit the culture? Have you experienced that, or you've been just one of those really lucky CEOs that just you get it right?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I'm trying to think through. Like, sure, there's not always 100% alignment, and we've gotten better as we've grown at screening for culture. And we really
that's
screen
good.
for culture first. Like, our entire first interview with folks is really about culture. It's about our worldview. It's about our values. It's not about the job at all. It's about
I like
who
that.
we are and what we believe, and we make sure there's alignment there first. And if there is alignment, great, we can talk about
The job.
the
The
nuts
position.
and bolts of what's going on and what you'd be doing with us, but that is first. But sure, I mean, I think that came because we recognized, and for us, our culture, we also have hundreds of volunteers.
Yes.
So it's like our culture it's not just the four walls of our office. Like the culture is literally, like, we have all of these adults who are working with young people in programs in public schools. So that's the culture too. So I think we try to screen for that. It's happened probably more with volunteers than it's happened with staff of
Yes.
having things happening and us feeling like, oh, this isn't a values alignment, or we're like not in sync here, or
Yes.
that's not the way we would have dealt with that situation.
Yes.
And then we take accountability for that. It's like, well, maybe we didn't train as well as we should have trained for this moment of like how you should have responded. But sometimes it's also like, this just might not have been a fit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that when it's not a fit? Like what systems do you have in place? And I'm asking that question
Yeah.
because that's one of the things that I have struggled with as a leader. One, because, I love people and I like staying connected to people, but when it's not a good fit, how do you communicate that so that, you part ways and we're still friends? Because it's nothing personal. I tell
that's
people
right.
all the time, like, this is not personal. This is always about the mission and the impact of the work that we're doing. And if you're not a fit, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you just said is the answer. I mean, I think it's
It's not always received that well, though, because people,
Well,
when you
can't-
have to part ways,
you're not
you walk away with.
responsible though for how people receive
say
it.
that all the time.
But you're not.
I
Like,
feel
you're not.
so-
If you're treating someone with dignity and respect, and you're talking from a place of like values and beliefs, people are going to receive things the way they're going to receive things.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I think we both have good people skills. I think we
Yes.
both have a relatively high emotional IQ.
Yes.
I think the fact that you're even sensitive to the reception of the information,
Right.
right, that you're thinking about how am I being received
Yes.
is 95% of the job, right?
Right.
I mean, meaning that you're probably going to be received better because you're actually thinking about that. I don't know, at the end of the day, I do think you just try to respect someone as a person
Right.
and find common ground and find the places where you do agree. And then, like you said, it's not a personal thing.
Right.
If it's not working, it's
just not
it's
working.
not working. And I think I think everyone knows everything. Like deep down, people know.
When
So
they're-
they may say, oh, everything's fine. They know it's not fine. People
Right.
know it's not fine.
It's not a good fit.
That's right. So I
Yeah.
think on some level, like, I've often found in those conversations that there's a sense of relief.
Okay.
Because it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like, we're both seeing the same thing.
Right.
Even if we maybe didn't want to believe that that was the case.
Right.
This is a space where we can just sort of confront it and say, like, this
Come
is
to
what's
an
happening.
agreement. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've come to terms with the thought process of I really want to be a reference for you, even if you're not a good fit in this environment, because it is about the team.
Yeah.
It's not about me as a person. It is about how do you work with our team collectively and as a whole. And if you don't work with our team well, then you're not a good fit for this particular culture. But how do I be a reference for you in the place that you are a good fit for, right?
Totally.
And so, but it's still, I find that sometimes very challenging even in that space, because I have people that I think you're not a good fit, but you like it here. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay. I want to stay.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but if it's not a good fit, how do I transition you to help you go to your next?
Like, what would be a better fit?
What would be a better fit?
Yeah. No,
exactly.
I think I've done plenty of that too, of like giving someone a long runway, right? The opportunity to depart gracefully and in a position that ultimately is like a net gain for both.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's growth for them, and it's also then an opportunity for us to move in a different direction.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I think that's always sort of the goal.
That's
but it's
good.
interesting that you say that it's not about you, because I think that's something that I've struggled with is I can almost work with anybody. Just my personality
Yes,
type.
likewise.
I can sort of like code shift and figure it out, and I don't really take things personally. But you're right. It's not about their interaction with me, especially
Exactly.
because of like the positional privilege that happens in a position of authority. People also treat us often differently than they're treating other members of the team.
That's so true.
Or students or caregivers, or right. So it's like really being in tune with like. You don't necessarily have to feel the thing, but you got to trust that when someone's like, something's not right, someone on
Yes.
your team or, a young person is like, this felt that they're right? That their
Absolutely.
perception's right. And that sometimes our perception is clouded by,
Yes.
The positional privilege we have of
And it's so funny
people
because
treating us differently. Yeah.
and I've heard that. I've heard where when you walked in the meeting, the tone shift,
Totally.
the conversation shift, and this person became agreeable. But before you were in the room, there was a whole different experience that was happening in this interaction.
Yeah.
So it's a really good observation. And because I always like to tell people, the same way you act with my team, I expect you to do the same with, with me, vice versa. Like I don't want you to be somebody else when you're with my team and then someone else when you're with me. So good. So those just some of the challenges I face. But we're not here to talk about my challenges. Bill, we're here to talk about yours, but also just the highs. Again, you've done so much. When you started Young Storytellers, you all had a team of how many?
Well, there were 2.5 of us when I started.
And you've grown the staff.
A lot. Yeah.
What was that like for you though? How did you do it?
I mean, piece by piece.
Okay.
Like one person at a time, because you have to raise the money.
Oh, yes.
Right, and then you have to like have the program that and have the area that you need the support in. So I mean, I think I was actually just talking to Kellyanne at City Scholars about this last week. One of the things that I did that was a little bit different is I had a generalist support on the team. So there were 3 of us, but I had like an associate director who was doing marketing, fundraising, operations, like all of that. And when he left to move back to the East Coast, and when he left, I had this decision that I had to make of like, was I going to replace that role with the generalist, or was I going to start finding people that had deeper expertise in different areas? And so the first hire like that was strategic was hiring an education director, because we didn't have anyone that had like a hardcore education background, and yet we were running an educational program.
Oh, wow.
So I think that decision then jump-started a series of decisions that were like, okay, well, we have an education director. Next, we needed like a chief of staff. Next, and an operations person. Next, we needed the development person as we were building our organizational capacity. I think one of the things that's difficult in running and growing an organization is the amount of pressure that we're under to only hire program
Oh, yes.
staff.
Because that's where the funding is.
That's
Everybody
exactly
wants
right.
to fund programs.
But then if you're only hiring program staff, who's doing everything
Ex-
that isn't program?
exactly.
We are, and you can't, right? And it's like
not
you can't lead and do every piece of the operations side. And it's that, it's again, that's the four legs of the chair and the seat of the chair. If the seat of the chair is the program, like those four legs have to be strong. And if you don't have a team, it's like literally you on your knees, it's your back
Trying to
that's holding up
hold
that
it,
table.
exactly.
And you can't do that. So, but I think part of it is, and we've struggled with this, and I'm assuming you have too, which is you overextend yourself.
Oh, yes.
Because the need is so great, and there's so many young people you could be working with. But I think over time, when you realize like, oh, we're in this for the long haul, it's like, okay, well, the mission has to meet our capacity.
Right.
And so we have to slow down.
To catch
and-
up.
That's right. And start to like put the building blocks and the pieces in place so that we can ultimately go further.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to learn that, because I think, I'm sure you felt this of like burning yourself out and burning your
yes.
small team out. And it's like, this isn't actually getting us.
Exactly.
Anywhere.
Another form of, is it sustainable or not?
That's right.
Is what we're doing sustainable?
And the need has not, you did not solve the need problem by
Right.
overworking everybody. The
Right.
need is still there.
Absolutely.
So it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, and there are still tens and hundreds of thousands of young people that you could be working with, then like, let's do it as smart and as sustainably as
Right.
possible.
And that's the challenge when you do know your why, in a sense, because we're here to serve young people, and us specifically kids in foster care, and we know the realities of what's happening with kids in foster care. So it becomes the driving force behind what you do. But it's like, Rome wasn't built in a day. How many
That's right.
times have we heard that, right?
Yeah.
And you wanting to solve, at least I know in my case, trying to solve all of these issues that were long before you came along, will probably be long after, hopefully not. Hopefully the work will sort of mitigate a lot of the issues that we're facing. But you're wanting to take all of this on and get it done at the same time.
Sure.
That's my sense of urgency for everything.
Yeah.
It's like there's a child out there who's in need of our support. How are we showing up for them?
Yeah.
And it was you. When I first started City Scholars, I think 8 years ago, Kellyanne had, made an introduction with us, and you said, I'm willing to meet you for coffee. Let's go sit down and talk. And you started asking me these questions, and you said, well, how are you sustaining? How are you even getting paid? And I was like, yeah, I pay a stipend. You was like, no, that's not sustainable. I was like, huh? He's like, that's not sustainable. And you begin to really share with me a plan and putting a strategy in place. So I am forever grateful just for you taking the time out to talk to me and just impart some wisdom into me at a time when, because for me, it was all, like Kellyanne told me, she said, you know what? I understand this is almost ministry. She said, but this is business, and you have to run this like a business. And you brought to me just some business elements that I didn't have when I first started the organization, and I'm just forever grateful.
Well,
So-
I mean, thank you for that. I mean, part of it is about business, I guess, but I think the way that I viewed it was that you were undervaluing yourself. So I was sitting across the table from you thinking like, you're this incredible asset for this organization, right? And if you're not taking care of yourself, and you're not like, if you're creating financial stress for yourself, at the end of the day, like, you're not going to be in the best position to move this organization to help as many young people as you're capable of helping. And it was, and so much of it was that, like, and I remember this so clearly, the leaning into being the CEO. Like, that's what it was. It was like just Tige owning that, like, I'm the CEO, I hold the vision, and we're gonna actually make this happen. And the fact that
And we talked about what a
we
studio,
talked about a studio
and all of
then,
that. Exactly.
and
we
the fact
sure
that we're
did.
sitting here today is like, well, you did it. I mean, you've been talking recently over the last few years about putting your mission ahead of your fear.
Making my mission greater than my fears.
That's right, and which I find to be so moving, and you've been such the embodiment of that. I think fear of owning the role, but then fear of asking people for help, asking for money, right? And again, I mean, the fact that you were able to say like, all right, that's my own personal stuff, and I'm going to put these young people and my service and the mission ahead of that. I mean, that's why we're sitting here today.
Wow.
So it's super inspiring. I'm
Well,
very inspired by you. So
Well, likewise, because I quote you all the time. I'm like, just really thinking from a strategic and a forward-thinking strategy in building and growing, and then embracing that role as CEO. We're constantly reminded of that in our leadership program.
sure. Well, because it's
really-
uncomfortable. You don't want it to be about you.
Right.
It's not about you. I mean, that's
Right.
what's so interesting about it.
Right.
To go back to the culture thing, it's like I feel that we are all a part of this young storyteller's journey. They're not a part of our journey, right? Like
Right.
we're on that journey. And so it's
Absolutely.
not about ego.
Right.
But but at the same time, you still have to own the role in order to be successful within the system, within capitalism, like,
Yeah.
the construct that we're in.
Yeah.
If you don't own it, you're not going to be successful. But it
Right.
is oftentimes uncomfortable. It's, I mean, I deal with that all the time.
Right. And it can be lonely sometimes. Do you find that the role you're in as president of Young Storytellers a lonely place?
Less lonely now because I've gotten better about building peer-to-peer networks.
Oh, great.
I've also gotten better at sharing the leadership within the organization. So like we have an entire directors team now, and I think being able to share leadership challenges with that team rather than feel like, and this is how I used to feel, I got to go off by myself and solve this on my own, and I can't let everyone know that it's difficult or I'm struggling or I'm worried. I mean, COVID kind of broke that in a way. We were all worried.
Yes.
We were all scared.
Yes, we were.
And I think that is healthy to have that vulnerability in a way. Now, I don't go into the office and I'm like, the sky's falling, y'all. Like, I don't know if we're gonna make payroll. Like, I would
Right.
never
Right.
do that. But I do think that there's a way to be candid about challenges that we're facing. I mean, the entertainment strike, again,
Right.
AI, technology, like not pretending that those things aren't issues or not thinking like, oh, I'm going to go solve them on our own, but y'all, let's sit down and figure out like, what is our perspective on this? Like, where is this going to provide opportunities for us? Where do we need to shore up our weaknesses because of this? And sort of having those conversations and bringing people into it.
Yeah.
I also think that I have a stronger board than I've ever had in terms
that's
of
great.
being thought partners.
That's great.
And then, I've been in City Scholars for 11 years. Like, I mean, this
Just
sounds
being equipped.
selfish, but for me,
Right.
because
No.
I've gotten so much out of, I didn't know what being a leader was before I came to City Scholars.
Right.
So that's why I keep coming back, is
Right.
because that, 4.5 hours the last
It's
Wednesday
like
of every
therapy.
month. It's like
the-
therapy.
you
It's like
explain
church.
a little bit.
It's,
Exactly. Explain a little bit about what City Scholars is, because I think you're the second guest or third guest that I've had, and we talk about City Scholars, but I don't think I've ever explained exactly what City Scholars is.
Well, it's a leadership development community, I would say, that has a leadership curriculum that we have all learned. But the real value of it is that it's the opportunity to convene leaders that are all working in education and working with young people in a variety of different ways. So you have arts folks, but you have folks working in the foster care system. You have folks that are running boys and girls clubs. You have folks that are running
Girl Scouts of America.
Girl Scouts and camps. I mean, all sorts of different programs, and even and some that are advocates, right? That aren't doing direct service, but that are actually doing advocacy work with government. And I think the opportunity to share best practices with leaders, but also to like roll your sleeves up and be candid about what are the challenges, and then just, I don't know,
Yes.
come up with solutions together and hear what other people have tried. And there's a lot of humility in that group, which I think I've really benefited from. And it's actually allowed me to have even more humility in my leadership, to admit when I don't know something, or when I need help, because people want to help. This world, I know it's like you turn the news on or you look at social media, you think the world is like just falling apart at the seams. And in some ways it is, but in other ways, the world is filled with people who want to help.
Right. Right.
Right? Like I have to think that like the nature of humanity is actually
Innately.
good.
Exactly.
And so, you know, trusting that, tapping into that, being willing to be vulnerable and ask for that help. Because people, you know,
They
if
really
you can be
do.
specific about what you need,
People want to help.
people want to help. And
I think I learned that
yeah.
when I was on the East Coast in New York. It's like New Yorkers love giving directions when you're lost. I'm like, which train? And I'm like, you have 3 or 4 people all trying to tell me which train. I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's so friendly. But otherwise, everybody is in the zone and
That's
it's
right.
a busy, busy place. But when you stop to ask for help, I was often surprised at how willing people were to really help.
That's right. Yeah.
I think LA is a little different. I think people do like to help in LA.
Yeah.
But LA seems to be the city where everybody is just overextended.
Yeah, and it's a little more transactional.
Yes.
Like I think
that's
of,
a better way to say it.
and we should
Absolutely.
talk about, well, we shouldn't call it LA. We should talk about the industry within Los Angeles.
The industry within Los Angeles. Thank you.
Is really what I think it is, because I think it's an industry thing. I think it's because it's always felt to me like the gold rush, right? Like the industry attracts people who are coming here to strike gold.
Right.
And then in that process, they feel like, okay, well, you know, I don't know that I want to ask this person for that, because I might need to ask them for this person, because I might need to ask them something for myself later. So things are kept a little closer to the vest because of that transactional nature. But I will say that I think what I found in the entertainment industry, doing the work that we're doing, is that as long as the values are aligned, you then end up attracting the best of the industry.
Absolutely.
And the best people. So I'm so grateful for the people that we
is true.
are connected to, who are supporting us, because they're some of the best people
Absolutely.
I've ever known.
They will roll up their sleeves.
That's right.
And get in the grind.
That's right.
With you. Absolutely.
But it's always the values. You just have to start with the values. And if that's right, and if that's clear, and they're doing it for the kids and not ego or themselves or whatever, then, you know, there's a lot of helpers here.
And a lot of alignment.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to start wrapping this up. But
All
before
right.
we wrap this up, I just got maybe 1 or 2 more questions for
Yes.
you. Who do you look up to as a leader? Like, who do you admire?
You?
Oh, you know what? Don't make me blush, Bill.
I'm like, that's tongue in cheek, but I mean that, like, you, Franco, Charity, like, honestly, that City Scholars cohort, like,
Yes.
I mean, to a person, Cynthia, Betty, I mean,
Right.
it is
They're
just
amazing.
It's an amazing group of leaders. So that's really who I admire. I mean, you know, there's all sorts of other great leaders in the world,
Yeah.
but the truth is, it's like all the leaders who are just doing the work day in and day out, the
Right.
leaders that you don't hear about, the leaders you don't necessarily see.
Right.
In some ways, I'm like more impressed
With the ones you know.
by that. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I agree.
So I think that's who motivates me. I'm not picking up a book to get motivated by like someone pontificating about leadership, right? Like
Right.
it's really spending time with folks who are doing the thing.
Yes, and getting to know them, even beyond just their leadership role.
Yes,
I
as
love it. The
people.
person, absolutely.
That's right.
Awesome. Do you follow any trends in leadership?
Do I follow trends in leadership? I mean, I'm probably not as much as I should.
Okay.
Right? Like I think that I don't this is just kind of like how I am. I'm not someone who's like, again, like I'm not reading a lot of books about leadership. Like
Right.
I'm trying to experience it
Yes.
and learn from my mistakes and get better
Yes.
in my actual leadership. Like, and I feel like, again, I don't want to make this whole thing about City Scholars, but you and I both have probably 24, you know, Kellyanne Hogan maxims about
yes.
leadership in our brain.
Yes, we do.
I don't know that I need anything more than that, to be
Good
candid.
point.
Because those are the things that I think about, but it isn't, it's because we've been living it,
Yes.
right? I mean, I've been there for over 10 years, you've been there for 8 years, and the
Yes.
whole point is that we are living these philosophies, we're putting them in action, and so that makes them very sticky to me.
Very
and
intangible.
impactful.
Yeah. I love that. And just for you all, the audience, Kellyanne is the CEO and founder of City Scholars, just an amazing leadership program.
Coming soon. You should have her on this.
There you go. You know what? I'm talking to her about
You'll have
that.
to
I'm
go
going
to
to have to
Orange
get her. That might be a 2-hour episode, y'all. She is filled with so many amazing nuggets and Kellyisms, as Bill said. Yeah. Bill, thank you again for coming to hang out with me today. I feel so great. Just the fact that my friends would say yes to come and spend time and share and impart some wisdom into our guests. So again, I want to say those 3 beautiful words: like, subscribe, and share. If you've heard anything on this podcast today that really set and resonated with you, I want you to know that we are here as a resource, as an answer to some of the challenges that leaders face. So until next time, remember, your leadership skills matters. Thank you. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today. I hope you were inspired and you gained some valuable nuggets that will help you to become a better leader and to walk in your God-given authority. Bye. Until next time.